Hey there guys, this is Obsidian Chill. Got another video for you today. Now I wanted to kind of start like a mini series in terms of, or a series of videos in terms of covering supercharges in DC Universe Online. I already had my past video which covered the single target supercharges, all the damage testing for 2500, 5000, 10,000. This video is going to look at the impact buffs have on supercharge damage. My next video I'm going to be taking a closer look at Rage's Berserk damage, which has some interesting nuances to it in terms of different types of damage that impacts it. And then after that, I'm going to be doing the AoE supercharge testing, which will be the AoE damage on 2500, 5000, 10,000. So this serves a couple of purposes. One, it's something that's not really talked about. Is kind of a lot of assumptions are based on it. So rather than having just kind of assumptions out there in the community, now you actually have the results. And we do have the supercharge revamp eventually coming. I'm going to really hope that it's beginning of this year. That's what I want to fight for. We did have it kind of in place before when Batuba was around. Then when Batuba left, it was picked up by Romaro. And then that one kind of got off the tracks a little bit. Then it was canceled. And then basically that's where we kind of sit. But we definitely need a supercharge revamp. This meta that we're in right now is just a little bit too crazy. I know that's slightly more in terms of the Gemini, but supercharges pay a large impact to that too. So basically the setup for this video, or the setup for this test, is that I did 6 different tests. I did a baseline test with basically just no buffs. These are the baseline damage, 135,000 might. I used Transformation, Philosopher's Stone, and Soul Amplifier. Now these aren't typical artifacts you'd use. It was mainly just to buff might. There's no point of running like Strategist or Grim or Quizlet or anything like that because that's not the damage I'm testing. These are my base stats. The second test is going to be Nitro, or Nitro Consumer's Cola and Omega, and the DPS trinket. So basically, more typically, if you're raid buffed and you pop your DPS trinket before a supercharge, think of it like max might. That's the test. Next one is going to be the Omega, the 5% damage cookie, and then the red Ambrosia Cola from Patrick Themyscira with the DPS trinket. So if you're buffed like for max crits in a raid, test 4 is going to be Nitro Omega DPS trinket with a supply drop. And then the fifth test is that crit test with the supply drop. And then my test number 6 is the basically the test here, like either the max might and max crits with a buff troll setup with a Kalon Tetraactive. So for these tests, for test number 1 through 5, I did 20 parsers, just to kind of give myself a good sample size. The buff troll one, a little bit harder because I can't do that necessarily myself. I had a friend help me with that, so I only did 5 parsers because it's not supposed to prove there. It's supposed to give you guys an idea. So I know there's going to be a whole bunch of numbers here, so I'm not going to really cover too much on it because, I'm going to include the spreadsheets in the description and the comment section. I'll just put it on Google Sheets so you guys can access it if you want to kind of go through it. But same thing. I know there's going to be a whole bunch of numbers. I'm not going to spend 10 minutes talking about them. Morely, I'm going to focus on the final summary, but we'll just kind of briefly go through it here. So just the baseline test, you can see here, I did 20 supercharges. My max parser was 1.3 mil. My lowest parser was 680k. My max hit was 271, so that plays a factor later. And my average crit was 50%, which is about normal. I'm not averaging a bunch of 80s or 100% crits parsers here. So obviously my highest parse, you can see there is 5 crits, so 100% crits. So it kind of ties in exactly why it's my highest parse. And then I guess I should mention, I hadn't actually mentioned it so far, but I'm using Entomb. This is all using Earth's Entomb Supercharge on the 5 sparring targets. Really should have put that here in terms of my setup. But yeah, so in terms of max might, like I said before, now my max might is 170,000, but it's missing the amulet buff. I'm not using the augment buffs, the tetra buff, claw buff, so my might could be a lot higher than 170, obviously. That was my, get rid of that. That was just my average summary. It's the same thing. Now my using this one jumped up to 1.6 mil in terms of my highest parse. My crit percentage was a little bit high, 54%, but still, within, reason. Max hit 340k. Doing the max crits. So basically, this is using the Harris Ambrosia, which is the red cola. That gives you an extra 3% crits, critical attack. So that's why if we go back to my setup here, you can see my attack chances here, 136.46. And then with the crits, it's 136, but 49. for attack chance. So that's, if you remember my previous video testing damage consumables, is because these 3 stack together. Nitro, Omega, and their Ambrosia Cola do not stack, but the cookie damage cookie, Omega, and Ambrosia do stack. So for whatever reason, my combat log analyzer broke. That's why I don't have that looking like that. So I just basically had to screenshot the parsers and put that in there, and then do my damage summary here. So it's a little bit extra work, but that's okay. Same thing, max damage 1.4 mil. My crits were 49%, so right in kind of a line, 50 to 40. My average DPS was 1.1. Max hit was 349. So now if I jump to the supply drop. So supply drop, I put this in here because I was using the Philosopher's Stone, so it buffs the supply drop. It doesn't buff the damage, it just buffs the duration. That's why it's still 20%. So if you guys didn't know, your supply drop buffs it by 20%. Once again, we can get rid of that extra math there. So it just means that if you're not using Philosopher's Stone, it's 8 seconds. If you're using Philosopher's Stone, it's 16 seconds, and your power costs 0. So that's the only difference between the two. But the 20% damage stays the same. So we jumped up to 1.7 mil. My crits were 40%, so this is on the lower side actually. Max hit was 409k. So test number 3, so you can see here current effects. I've got the damage cookie, I've got the Omega, I've got supply drop, I got my DPS trinket, and I've got the Harris Ambrosia red cola. Same thing, my log analyzer broke, so I just had to screenshot the parsers. Put it in here. Max highest parser 1.7 mil. Max hit jumped up to 417,000. Crits were 50%, so once again aligned with everything else. And then for the buff troll, just showing the stats there, jumping up to the critical attack chance going up to 51%, and the critical weapon damage going up as well. Ooh, get rid of that as well. Sloppy numbers. But yeah, this is the difference here. It's really quite similar. Now, I will point out the crit damage difference between here is quite large. Now, it would have been averaged out over if I did a bunch of parsers with it, but it's more, I'm not trying to get like an exact science here. That's why I only used 5 parsers, but this crit 64% of the time. This only crit 48% of the time. So obviously, it's going to appear that the max might with the buff troll is a lot stronger, but in reality, it's pretty close because you can base it off the max hit. Because the max hit is not impacted by, well, it's impacted by crit, but it's not impacted by anything else. So 556, 557, so it's really about the same. But it's much more practical to run a raid with max might, because if you go back to my max might setup, the max might is basically just my setup here. Max might is basically just Nitro, Omega, and a DPS trinket. So much more practical to do that in a raid than running like the Ambrosia Cola every single time. But as you can see here, say when I did crit correctly, so like 40% crits here, 1.758, 40% was 1.756. My 60% crit, 2.08 mil, 2.081. So if I had to do like 30 or 40 parsers or whatever to find the exact science here, max crits would probably eke it out over in the end. But once again, it's not as practical running this setup. So taking a look at the final summary, which is what I wanted to focus on. The point of this video is basically to show you why you should be either buffing when you use a Supercharge, what the damage you're missing by not using a supply drop. Like say you go into a raid and you just pop your Supercharge. Like you're not buffed, you're not using like a DPS trinket even, nothing like that. So this is basically to show you the damage you're missing by simply doing that. Or the damage you're missing by not running like a buff troll setup in terms of like a power troll. So my baseline, so I test these percentages are based off the largest hit, because this is the only thing that wasn't influenced by anything else. Because if I did total damage for here would be accurate, but the total damage for the buff troll wouldn't apply because the parses are a lot less, and then I had less crits on the max crit parse. So that's why I can't really take in terms like average damage or the highest parse, because here obviously this is way higher because I had 5 crits, and here I only had like 3 or 4 crits. But if we're taking a look at the damage, so if I spec max might and pop like, I take a Nitro, I take Omega, and I pop a DPS trinket, I have a 25% damage increase just by doing that. So that the damage increase I would get over running a Supercharge just by buffing like that, like a simple taking a couple colas, or having the group take Omega. It's not like you have to take Omega each time as a group buff. But you're missing out on 25% damage just by doing that, and 28 by max crits. But 3% is not a huge difference. But once again, it's not realistic to run that consumable for every single raid, because A, you have to transport back to Themyscira to pop it before the raid starts, and it only lasts a half an hour. It'll last through death, so that's one advantage, but it only lasts half an hour, and then you're stuck going back to Themyscira to pop it again, and it's really expensive to maintain it. So it's one of those things where it's kind of like for very specific situations, maybe like speed feats and stuff, you want to run it. And then with, for example, for a supply, so this is that if you just use your DPS trinket and if you miss out on a supply, you're missing out on a 50% damage increase. But here you're missing out another 25% damage. So basically you're missing out on double the damage if you don't use a supply with your Supercharge. So you think that, yeah, you should be lining up everything with Supercharge, or if you don't have a supply drop handy and someone else drops the supply, you wait for those moments to drop a Supercharge, because that's the damage you're missing out. So if you pop your Supercharge without a person's supply drop or without any buffs, then you're missing out on, double the damage. And then with the buff troll setup, it's even more. So it jumps from a 53% increase to 105 over baseline, and then the max crits was same thing, about the same. And then here, this is the increase basically off this. So basically, if I use Nitro, Omega, DPS trinket, and supply drop, my max hit goes from 409. But then if I have a buff troll with me, it goes up another, all the way up to 557. So basically I get a free, extra like over 150,000, almost 150,000 damage per hit just by running a buff troll, instead of like a power troll or having access to a buff troll. Because Claw, it's Claw and Tetra, and they're going to have a lot of perk DPS, so it's going to most likely the buff troll could be running like Claw, Cog instead of Tetra, so then you're going to lose a little bit of damage. But say, for example, if you tell the troll to buff Might, or the Might's buffing troll anyway, then you've got that potential damage for the increase. A 36% increase over not running a buff troll, and 33 for max crits. So that's basically what I want to share here. It's not like you didn't expect it already. Like, supply drops equals good, buffing equals good, it leads to increased damage. But it's more that this gives you a better idea of what the damage you're missing out on. Because you may think it's like a ton of difference, and you may think it's like minuscule. At least this kind of gives you an idea of how much damage you're missing out by not buffing into raids and not using spy drops, and then not having access to like a buff troll. And that's all this video wanted to show you. Just kind of give you a brief kind of overview of that perspective. So stay tuned for my next video. Actually, my next video is going to be talking about the double artifact XP. Then I'll be doing the Rage Berserk Supercharge, and then follow it up with probably the AoE testing. If not, then in a few days, or like next week, the AoE testing. Because there's a little bit more involved with that. That's a bit longer of a video. So any other questions or concerns, put them in the comment section below. And you'll find that, once again, you'll find the spreadsheet in the comment section as well. Thank you. Thanks for watching.